Now, I know many of you clicked on this video thinking, what is this guy rambling about? I know I'm not Rudy and Smpratte. To which I say, do you? Over my time in the hobbies and around these markets, I've seen no shortage of people striving for the success of these two, wanting to live the dream that these two have by becoming wealthy, self-employed, and doing what they love, all while not understanding that there are many key differences between themselves and these two, but all of them are aiming for the same goal: becoming well off and happy with collectibles as a nice little either investment, career, whatever. More specifically, we're talking about investments today. So let's answer the question. Should you invest in Pokemon and TCGs as a whole? To answer that question, we need to know a few things. Number 1, are you established? Number 2, do you know how to build wealth versus make money? And number 3, do you know why Smpratte and Rudy are successful? Once we have explored all three of these questions and given you all the information you need to make the answer for yourself, we can then answer the question, should you invest in Pokemon and TCGs as a whole? First up, are you established? There's two parts to this. What does it mean to be established exactly? Being established means you have a strong financial foundation beneath you, usually built within the traditional markets. The reason the traditional markets are where it's usually built is because this is where you can most reliably attempt to make money. All investments to some extent are gambles, but you're attempting to improve your odds of actually making money. And there's a reason they're called traditional markets, and they have stuck around for so many years. And then as you navigate these markets, you'll typically be picking up some skills and basic understanding of economics just because you're interacting with them. And it's really important to pick up those skills as you're becoming established, so that way you can transfer them over to future markets when you decide to interact with them. And the second part to answering this question is, why should you be established first? Well, by becoming established first, you will have the tools and understanding already needed to be able to comprehend these markets. Otherwise, you're shooting in the dark in an already difficult to navigate market. It's exactly as I said before, that as you're navigating these and you're learning them, those tools, markets across the board have a lot of similarities. So by becoming established, you're getting to bring those tools with you. And by creating that strong financial foundation for yourself, then whenever you do enter any of these alternative assets, these TCGs, Pokemon in particular, then you can choose to invest in a much wider variety of items and higher end ones, so you're not simply relegated to the cheapest sectors of the hobby. And lastly, as we all know, diversification is key, and you shouldn't solely be within one market at a time. If you are solely in Pokemon, that you are at the mercy of an irrational and speculative market. And that's just not any fun for anybody, because you will become increasingly stressed out as everything you have is tied to one market versus a multitude. Now for the second question. Do you know how to build wealth versus making money? It may seem simple on the surface, but we need to establish the difference. Building wealth is the mindset and understanding that simply having money, or even in some cases not having much money at all, doesn't determine your financial outcome. Take the story of Ronald Reed. He was a simple gas station attendant and a janitor for his entire life. And yet, over the span of his lifetime, he saved $8 million. Simply by having this wealth building mindset of trying to save, being frugal, understanding he needs a plan for the future, and not going too far out of his way to spend a ton of money. And just through this, he was able to accumulate that fortune. And if you simply keep going about your day without truly trying to build up wealth by putting it into assets, different investment classes, then eventually the money's going to dry up for you, because one day you're going to get that last paycheck. Secondly, do you know how to stay wealthy? There's only two ways to stay wealthy: either frugality or paranoia, or some combination of the two. Frugality is going to assist you in not making those excessive purchases. Perhaps you don't need this extra car. Maybe you don't need a slightly bigger house. And paranoia, never fully trusting that the world is as safe as you think and the markets can always go a little down. This will help you keep that wealth in check. And lastly, live well within your means and don't over-leverage yourself. Otherwise, one day misfortune may come knocking and destroy everything, as it did for Richard Fusconi, a former Merrill Lynch vice chairman who was bankrupted. Do you know why Smpratte and Rudy are successful? On Rudy's side, he started off going to school for finance and going to work on Wall Street. He already was learning all of these markets and was interested in investing from a very young age. As he was navigating that, though, he went through the '08 crash and he had a passion for MTG. The main thing is, I'm not sure at what point he exactly entered MTG all the way and become the Rudy we all love and know today, but along the way, we know he invested a lot into bonds. He definitely had stocks. At this point in time, he now has real estate. He at one point even ran a successful restaurant. He's mentioned it in one video. He ran a restaurant and he sold it off to, I believe it was the American Military Air Force. I'm not 100% sure about that. May have been Navy. He also has his hands in other card stores nearby. He has partnerships, his warehouses, he runs his Patreon, all these things, all working together. And if we take away the Patreon and the card stores, many of the things I just spoke about, including real estate, were happening before he entered the MTG space. He was fully established in traditional markets. He already knew how to run a business. He knew how to navigate these markets. He came with the knowledge, just as I believe you should. And all the way up until now, he finally has a very large position in just about everything. Just look at any one of his recent videos. You can see the pallets and walls of just every TCG under the sun. This just in, we have live footage within the Taco Master's warehouse. Back to the video. Now, Smpratt's success came in a very different way from Rudy, quite frankly, the opposite of his. He started off while he was in college as a philosophy major. He spoke about how selling a Charizard card for $365, $1 for every day of the year, was a very large sale for him at the time. He was starting from the proverbial first step. He was at ground zero learning how to do everything. And from then on, he just kept going with it in spite of people telling him this is stupid, this is a bad idea, etc., etc. And he's become the man we know and love today in regards that he is just the go-to when it comes to knowledge, and he has all of these different revenue streams coming in from Pokemon. Along the way, though, he has established himself in traditional markets based off of what he said. I can't really go into detail on anything, unfortunately, due to the fact that he plays all of the information of his portfolio close to the chest, but he has confirmed, of course, he has traditional investments. These two men show very different approaches to collectible finance. Rudy was a successful businessman prior to entering the market and used his pre-existing knowledge to navigate the marketplace, and due to his prior success, he had resource available. Meanwhile, Smpratte started from the first step and built up to where he is today through just sheer perseverance, despite whatever was happening around him at the time. Rudy took the more risk-moderated route, meanwhile Smpratte took the path most people are familiar with today. Most people want to start in Pokemon, or at least many investors, and then build up from there because it's fun, they have more control. And you then went on to eventually branch off into the traditional marketplaces. I personally am not a fan of those approaches. It carries much more risk than Rudy's approach. But the thing is, when we look at both of these cases, they are two extremes. Both of them are extremely successful, and the further you go out into the extremes, the more luck plays a part in their success, as well as you can take fewer and fewer lessons from their success and apply it to yourself, simply because that's the curse of being in one of the extremes. Smpratte was attempting to follow Pokemon at a time when attempting to do so was just considered foolish. By all metrics, it was a fan chasing a dream, but as luck would have it, the TCG took off, and as one of its earliest adopters, he benefited greatly. I don't think that's arguable. Truly, luck played a considerable part in his success. Rudy, on the other hand, is a little harder to really guess how much luck played a part in it, because he set up a system for himself where he lowered his price to such a point that he can acquire gains that are unachievable for most. Think about his Patreon. He sells a ton of product to his people, and then he'll hold on to a pallet for himself. He's even said at some points he's able to get the price of that pallet almost down to zero because of just how ridiculous his system is. It's fantastic. But nonetheless, luck still played a part in this, simply because Magic the Gathering took off. That's not something that you could have predicted, because there is no shortage of collectibles that have come and gone over the years that were just as strong or stronger than Magic in some cases, that's what they appear to be. and they just disappeared. They went downhill. It happens. You can't fully control nor predict what is going to happen to these collectibles. So luck did in fact play a part. Just we can't quantify it, but we all know it. And as Rudy loves to say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Luck has always been a part whenever these the major extremes happen. Oh, by the way, and remember, this conversation hasn't even taken into account the luck of a global unknown virus of unspecified origin coming into the fold and driving almost all alternative assets to the moon. So, now that you've sat through all that, what's the answer to the question, you may wonder? Well, it's different for everyone, but the answer I think is best is it depends. If you have already established yourself and have money to spare, go ahead and add these markets to your portfolio. They're a fun and potentially healthy addition to a strong, diverse portfolio. But if you aren't there yet, take some steps back and relax. There's always time to invest when you're ready, and if the market isn't there by the time you are, you'll be thanking yourself. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, guys.